Hello, and welcome to Ball Leadership. I'm Colin Pooler, and along with my co-host Kavis Reed, we're dedicated to discussions of leadership. We hope to coach, inspire, and encourage leaders in their development and help them move to the next level. We explore entertaining conversations about the challenges, learnings, ups and downs, and fundamentals of leadership. Our guest today is Senator Pamela Wallin, international television journalist, entrepreneur, author, corporate executive, international diplomat. We have a hilarious discussion on character and moral core.
Character trumps genius, right? So you can be the smartest person in the room, but if you are not kind, if you are not decent, if you are not fair, if you are not empathetic, if you can't give when others are in need, then all the brains are for naught.
Senator Pamela Wallin. Is honorable? Am I supposed to say honorable?
Yeah, you're supposed to say Queen of Sheba. That's what you're supposed to say.
Is the fact that you got 14 doctorates.
Yeah, I will.
Like, how in the world do you get 14 doctorates?
Okay, they're honorary, right? Okay, so I don't practice medicine. I am not a lawyer.
Laugh with us and learn with Senator Pamela Wallin. Let me introduce you, Kavis, to Senator Pamela Wallin. Is honorable? Am I supposed to say honorable?
Yeah, you're supposed to say Queen of Sheba. That's what you're supposed to say.
Let me just say, I've watched her for years, so there is no introduction necessary. It's an honor. It's an honor. Thank you so very much.
Oh, no, this will be fun.
Well, it was... Yeah, so Kavis, I don't know if you had any of the weather that we had, but we had another Saskatchewan. I can't even call it a winter day because it was.
No, it was.
It snowed.
It was
like
raining.
crazy.
It was raining.
You couldn't see anything.
No, it was nuts. Truly nuts.
It rained. It snowed. It blew like 80 kilometers an hour.
Yeah, it was just.
And
crazy.
then it got sunny, and then it rained again. And then it froze.
And then it froze. I just had to drive to the little town that's close, and that was sort of at 80 clicks. And then when we're done this, I've got to go into Wadena, and then tomorrow I drive to Saskatoon. But I'm hoping they'll have one more day to just like clean. So that, but we're going to get black ice.
They had to close highways. They had to close the highway south of was it Humboldt?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm on Highway 5, so that's exactly.
Yeah. So you're going there. So you've got a fun trip ahead of you.
Yeah.
So
and then I can wait for all the planes to be delayed. It takes me 2 days now to get to Ottawa.
Do you ever get?
Do I what?
Well, do your bags show up? Do your
I
bags
never
show
give
up,
them bags.
or
I
is it
never
just you?
give them bags. I never give them bags.
You're brilliant. You are brilliant because
I can go to
I'm a
Europe for
fool.
2 weeks in 1 week. No bags.
Yeah, clearly I'm a fool because I'll give them my bags and then I'm sitting there wondering. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, first of all, welcome to our show.
I'm very glad to be here. I'm very glad to be here. We should have done this yesterday. It would have been.
I've already got my first complaint.
What?
Oh yeah, it would have been a great day. Yeah, we would have been locked inside, couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
But my first vent though, because we usually start off telling stories. But you notice that there's actually there's a dress code, or at least a hair code.
There's a hair code.
There's a reason why we call it bald. There's a hair code.
I refuse to participate in that part of this. I just puffed up my hair just to make the two of you really jealous.
I am jealous. I have to admit.
If I had hair, I would do all sorts of things. I'd color it. I would do all sorts of things.
Okay, just puffing for you. That's it.
But yours looks fantastic.
Well, I kind of like this bald look.
For those just Well, somebody was asking me, and Kavis, I don't know if I was at a restaurant a couple weeks ago, and the one of the management, the owners there, was somebody that I knew, but I hadn't seen for like 10, 15 years. And they came by the table, and the first thing they said, "Collin, like, you look so young." And of course, it was all the lotion that I use on a daily basis, because when you don't have a lot of hair,
Yeah.
see.
Okay, but
So that was the thing. That was the thing.
On your head. You literally have to put lotion on your head.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's a lot of work.
The dryness will become a major issue. It's a lot of
It
work.
might be easier to do this.
It's work.
It might be a lot easier to do this.
So there's a lot of work to look as beautiful as we do. Or at least it takes a lot of lotion, and it could be all sorts. Thank you. I have body butter. I have shea cocoa shea butter something.
TMI.
And oh gosh. Well,
I know where you're going with this.
So for those who are just listening, and just for those just listening in, welcome to Bald Leadership. Today's our guest is the Honourable Senator Pamela Wallin. And for those that don't know who she is, there'd be something wrong with you if you didn't know who she was. But for those who may not know, I will still be kind enough to try. First of all, Pamela's from Saskatchewan. So that's the first thing. And Kavis, I realize you're not from but we can forgive Kavis because his wife's from Saskatchewan. Okay. He married a Saskatchewan girl.
You're in. You get to stay.
So yes, yeah.
I was smart enough.
Yeah.
I was smart
Sometimes
enough.
I have to explain why we're friends, but it's okay because his wife's from here. And amongst other things, being a senator, I mean, you've been a diplomat. You've obviously been in broadcasting. You started your own broadcasting company. Been on boards several, but the thing that really impressed me, and is the fact that you got 14 doctorates.
Yeah, I will.
Like, how in the world do you get 14 doctorates?
Okay, they're honorary, right? Okay, so I don't practice medicine. I am not a lawyer. But it is very nice gesture that universities across this country have done that. I was a chancellor at the University of Guelph, and I really feel that that's one of the most important places in our world. This is not to say that we don't need people with actual real life skills and trades, because we really, really do. But universities are important places for thinking. And, I get worried about some of the stuff I see on campus these days, but overall, I think it's, I grew up in a family. My mother had to go back to university in middle age because she was a teacher and she wanted to become a principal. They weren't going to let a woman become a principal anyway, so it didn't matter. But I grew up with that notion that education is the most important thing. So even though they are honorary, I cherish all 14 of them. And then, then I've got an honors BA that I actually got myself, but that and 50 cents, right? Won't even get to public coffee.
Well, I was kind of hoping with 14 you might split a couple with Kay.
Just one.
Nope.
Just one.
Nope.
It was.
I'm keeping them all.
Well, and it's like I was like, I mean, I knew about the honor degrees. I knew about the University of Guelph. I didn't know about a few other things, and then Kavis, Senator Wallin spoke for me for the construction sector. We hosted a leadership conference, and you were a part of that as well, Kavis, on a different day. But Center spoke, and then you had, didn't you say that you'd also worked in corrections for a bit, like for a day
One
or
of my
something?
one of my very first jobs out of university was to be work for a government body called Human Resources Development Agency, but my job was being a social worker in the Prince Albert Penitentiary, where the fellow who was the in charge, basically, they have a title. Anyway, he just basically said, "You're a hostage incident waiting to happen, but let's give it a shot." And and it worked out really well. I mean, compared to newsrooms and the House of Commons and the Senate, that was a pretty safe spot. So, so that was it was a it was an interesting insight into life and humanity and what matters. So I cherish that time because you learn a lot doing that stuff. You also learn that everybody that's in jail is innocent. Um, and but you get that, right?
So we have hope. Yeah,
Yeah.
we have hope, Cave. It's just in case it happens.
Yeah, we
That's
have
the
hope.
line. Yeah,
I,
yeah.
Colin, I really love the fact that right away, Senator, you spoke about your time at the University of Guelph, and I don't want to veer off the topic, but one of the things I want to ask about, you said it's a place for thinkers. Are
Yeah.
our universities and our educational systems creating leaders today?
I don't think they're doing that particularly well. I'm not sure anybody sees that as their job, except when you get into advanced levels. And you see it in business schools more than other places, obviously. But I think it's kind of a double-edged sword. I mean, you can't be a leader unless you have a basic skill set. You have to understand not just the business you're in, but you have to understand people. And so you're going to get a lot of that socialization and maybe some context. What I find about, and this is truer in journalism schools as well, that you can go and teach people the skills of reading and writing and turning videos on and off, but journalism or any other kind of career, you need to be well rounded. You need to have read books. You need to have wrestled with math problems that you couldn't deal with. You needed to think about science. And all you have to do is look around, and having gone through the pandemic, if we all had a little bit more basic knowledge under our belt, we'd cope better, right? We would think about the consequences of our actions a little better. So I think it's hard to teach leadership in that sense, but you're giving people the information they need to be smarter leaders should they get there.
Yeah, and in theory and in practice, I harken back to the many moons ago I was in university, and the
Yeah.
biggest aspect of university that I took away is not the sciences, but it's the interaction with the
Yeah.
multicultures, the ability
Oh,
to. I
sure.
grew up in a very almost segregated world, and university expanded my world 100-fold. And
Yeah.
learning, my roommate was from Japan my second year. My
Yeah.
roommate was from Georgia my first year. My roommates were from different parts of the world and country.
Exactly.
And I
Yeah.
wonder if there can be more of a concerted effort to allow students and engage other cultures to really be more versatile and more informed.
Yeah, I think universities are doing that. I mean, they're trying with limited resources, like we all understand that this is a problem, but they're doing exchanges now. That was I did one of those things when I was in university. When I first went, I decided, even though I was born and raised in Wadena, Saskatchewan, I decided I was going to be a French teacher. Okay, so I'd never heard the word spoken before, but I was intrigued. I found a book, is actually what happened, that was in French, and I thought this was so exotic. But then I went and spent a summer in France learning about their form of government in France, which is obviously different than ours. And and had to do it in French, to do it in another language. So the kids I was with were from all over the world. And I 1,000% agree with you, because spending time with those people, we're all trying to communicate with each other in French, even though it was only first language for a handful. And we just learned so much about ourselves and about a sense of humor and being humble and, mispronouncing the words and asking dumb questions. And I think all of that is really what the learning process is about. But exposure to other cultures, other people, other languages, other colors. Like my first boyfriend when I went to university in Regina, and I'd grown up, as I said, in a small town. My first boyfriend was Jewish. And I'd never met somebody who was Jewish before. So, and then we went to Montreal, where his family was from, and I was going to a women's conference, because that was, it was very militant then. And of course, I went to stay with his house. At his house, I used the wrong cutlery. They had to take it back and get it all so, you learn those things along the way. It's all part of the education process.
Well, you said a couple things, and I mean, as you had an opportunity for us to talk, and the really focus of why we hold this particular podcast is really to engage other leaders, either across the country or throughout North America when the opportunities. But it's really about helping all of us move through this journey of developing into leaders and enhancing our leadership ability, but also folks who are starting out in leadership very, very young. You could see it on playgrounds where it seems like there's the Pied Piper that everybody wants to follow, and to understand, well, how do we turn that and affect our world over the long run? And a lot of the things that you just talked about there, getting the foundations was really important. And a lot of us, and including myself, really felt that I had to move quickly, that getting leadership was needed to be a fast ride. Mm-hmm. And I listened to one of your podcasts on the No Nonsense podcast, and Michelle Romano had said
everybody has to be bald on that
so
podcast too. Yeah, sorry.
There you go. So we've made
Michelle Romano. I won't interrupt.
Michelle said
yeah.
she had said, you can't take the elevator, you have to take the stairs. Yeah. Right? It's not a quick trip to really develop into a strong leader. Like there's a step by step, a grind, a lot of effort, time, and for a lot of us, we weren't necessarily taught all those things. We just, we saw Braveheart or something and thought we just get on a horse and say a few words and suddenly we're leaders.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've had the opportunity to see a lot of people through the years, and I'm wondering, would you have any further thoughts on that? And I'm particularly about what Michelle had said, but it was really immediately applied to developing as a leader. And you can't take the elevator, you got to take the stairs. Yeah.
No, I think that's a really, really, I mean, it's so simple, but it's so profound, right? I mean, you just stop and think about it. There's no shortcut. And she talked about it, and I always talk about this, that one of the best teachers is failure, because we learn that way, right? You try something, or you think you can lead or be the boss in some situation, and then someone looks at you and says, okay, that was really stupid, or you really made me angry, or what. So you've got to go through that, you've got to go through it so that the lesson is really learned. But I will give my mother and father more credit than any of the formal education I've had anywhere on this, is that they taught me, and I've got the phrase for it. They never said these words, but character trumps genius, right? So you can be the smartest person in the room, but if you are not kind, if you are not decent, if you are not fair, if you are not empathetic, if you can't give when others are in need, then all the brains are for naught. And that's a really important balancing act to success, and even taking the stairs. When you get to the top of that stairs, you still have to balance who you are and how you treat people. So those things have to work in tandem.
And obviously, your journey has been one that has been much declarated, but people don't see the challenges that you have had to face to get
Yeah.
to where you are and the continual journey. What would you say are some of the foundational leadership principles that have allowed you to navigate all the obstacles that you've had to overcome?
First and foremost, and this is no surprise, moral core. Like, you have to know if that everything you do, and especially in this day and age, is going to be subject to criticism or exposure. You know, it's like the old don't say anything in a quote off the record conversation that you don't want on the front page of the newspaper, right? Because there's none of that. So I think you just have to come from that core, which is what I'm doing right or wrong. And we all know really what right or wrong is. So if you know that what you're doing is the best you can do and that it's the right thing to do and it's an important thing to do, then if people stand in your way or try to undermine you or fire you or make up stuff about you that isn't true, you can always go to that place inside, which is, I know what I did. I know whether I was right or wrong. I know whether I did the right thing. And so you just, if you've got that, and that comes obviously from our early life, for those of us who are lucky enough to have had some good structure and some good parenting. But you can also develop that, right? You can also develop that because it can be situational in that sense. What is the right thing to do in a certain circumstance might not always be the right thing to do, but you know, so you've got to have that flexibility. You can't just
Right.
be, yeah. So I don't know. I think you know, moral core and confidence and the character trumps genius. You know, those are, and take the stairs. All of those things. These are things you have to practice every day. I mean, you don't get up in the morning and say, "Gee, I'm going to think about, you know, how character trumps genius." It has to become part of you so that it is your reaction. Right? It is how you deal with the world, not some kind of, you know, semi-conscious act, because then you've got then you lose the authenticity part. And if people don't believe you, they sure as hell won't trust you. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for we've spent a fair bit of time talking about that element of that authenticity.
Yeah.
It comes up over and over again, and the risks that come with being authentic and vulnerable.
Absolutely.
And you know that we kind of have to weigh that. Kavis and I had a conversation about having to weigh that in the calculus. That is it worthwhile being that, because sometimes the world will tell you something different.
Yeah.
and
No, it's absolutely
and
true.
it can present itself that way, especially in the days of social media.
Yeah. No, I think we're into a whole new era.
You have thoughts on that?
Well, you know, look, I use social media. I think social media is a very valuable tool, and I think that we need to educate ourselves, and certainly the younger people in our lives, about the implications that all the kids, you know, the people under 20 that I know they know no other life, right? So when you say be careful about the information you put on screen, they go, what's the difference? Everybody knows everything anyway. They can hack you and track you, and so they don't worry about that, right? Where I, of my generation, I'm still saying, "Oh my God, you know, I don't want to say that online because somebody will know." But being a public person, you look at it that way, that everything that you say is good. You know, somebody's going to dig up some tweet, some speech from 500 years ago and say, you know, and the problem with social media, and even I'll put this in the political context, is that people should evolve and change their mind and have new thoughts and change their position on things. And what we do is punish people for having a new thought. We say they just did a 180. They've had the change of mind for political purposes.
Right.
When actually in our own lives, we know this, you read something, you experience something, it changes you. So if people change if the leopard just changes their spots a little bit, that should be a good thing, right? But we put in and social media really, plays on that, which is, you said this, you were that person, here's that picture of you, here's that comment from you. So that's the part I really hate about it, which is it kind of really exaggerates that. On the other hand, I'm sitting out here at Fishing Lake and I've got access to anything I want to read and know, provided my technology is working. Okay. And I can sit here and educate myself. So I love it for that. And I happen to be an Elon Musk fan in this particular world, because he's trying to go back to the basics, which is we have rules around hate and around defamation and around racist hate and all of that. And then the rest of it, if you're a free speecher, which I am, then buck up. You're going to find stuff there that you disagree with, that offends you. Then change the channel, right? Let's not censor everything so that we don't, offend somebody, because you're going to offend somebody anyway. So I hope we can get back with social media to a little bit more of that.
And how it dovetails with the issue of being authentic. We were talking about the fear of being an authentic self, mistakes and all, right?
Yeah,
all my warts and errors, that errors I make about every 7 minutes, and with folks in our team, they could, I'm sure if you gave them a whiteboard, they'd fill that up and start writing on the walls of all the things that I've messed up on. Or things that, hey, you said this last year and now you said it different. Right. Well, I got new information. I got deeper understanding, and I stopped being an idiot. Whatever
I got smarter. It is. Yeah. I grew up in front of a television camera professionally, right? I started in radio and then newspapers and then television. So my life is kind of an open book, social media or not, because I made a lot of my mistakes, live and in color on television.
So you both of you brought up a point, and Collin, if yours is every 7 minutes, mine is every 3 minutes. But both of you brought up the point about leadership, and when you look at it, Pamela, Collin, do you find that a lot of very well qualified people are afraid to step in their leadership rank because they don't want the scrutiny that comes from the instant tweet, the instant text? Because so many people, my grandfather said, if you walk in a room 100 people, 20 of them are going to dislike you just because. They're not going to even give you a chance. So don't worry about pleasing everyone. But do you find that a lot of very qualified leaders are staying out of the arena because they don't want this social media criticism and being under that kind of scrutiny? Whereas in our generation, it was daily news. It was the newspaper. It wasn't right away, instant opinion, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Well, I think all I need to say is a couple of things, like Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. 336 million people in the United States, and those are the two they pick as the candidates to come forward with all of the baggage and all of the flaws. No, we do not have the A-team aspiring to leadership. I'll be a little more cautious about my own country because of everything that we're discussing here, but
and I'm trying to get citizenship, so
you be careful then. You be careful. No, I don't think we have the A-team. I don't think we have the A team in leadership in a lot of places for precisely what you say. They have baggage and they know it, or even if they don't, somebody is going to make it up and they're going to wear it, right? Because you're in so many situations now with that you're guilty until proven innocent, right? It's the flip side of how the world is supposed to be. And it doesn't matter, the damage is done, right? So I don't think, you see people that even corporately, people who have the means to buy back their companies and take them private so that they don't have boards of directors and public accountability. And I don't think they're doing this because they're thieves and horrible people. I think they're doing it because they have trouble getting stuff done with all of the scrutiny. And if it's your company, you kind of at a certain point say, I think I just would like to run it the way I believe it should be run. And we see it 1,000% in politics, which is, people have to really think about what they're going to subject their families to and themselves and what will come next. In politics, you might be there for 4 years if you win an election or you don't know, but if you've jeopardized any other than potential career, because of your time there. I was interested, I haven't read it yet because I've got it in the office, but Bill Morneau's book, who went into as the finance minister. He's independently wealthy beyond anything we can all understand here. And he chose public service and nothing but punishment for it. Like, none of us are perfect. I'm not saying that, but you do that at great risk. And if you're independently wealthy, then it's fine if politics doesn't work out. But if you're not, it's not.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and to follow up on that, I appreciate your honesty. To follow up on that, is there something that we can do to course correct this? Because I'm observing the same thing. Everyone says, can we get new people in the arena? Can we get new people in the arena? If I'm a 25-year-old right now, why would I want to get into the arena?
Yeah, you wouldn't. You actually wouldn't. And that is a huge problem because there's already a disconnect. I don't know if any of you saw this story last week. It was kind of an inside joke, but the Senate, in its wisdom, some days you really wonder who dreams this stuff up, decided that it was going to offer senators a course in dealing with millennials, because a lot of us have millennials working for us because they're young, right? Got lots of energy. It was just so profoundly insulting that we would, to both ends really, that senators would need to have a course. And if you're a millennial going to work for a senator, you're going, what the hell is the matter with you people? Like, hello, I'm here. I have this whole thing.
What are you talking about me for? What is
Yeah, is it like some kind of group of, a species of animals that we haven't quite discovered yet? So, we've got some real generational disconnects as it is, and it is on us.
Well, it's like the hinterland or something.
Yes, but the hinterland, and that's kind of, you have to be of a certain age, even know what those little moments of black and white TV were like, where, ooh, this is a duck. Wow. You need to go to the hinterland to see one. And you know what? Okay, now I'm going off on a tangent, but this disconnect, not only generationally, but geographically, the rural-urban thing, it just sticks in my craw. Mm-hmm. We had, the former environment minister was, in all the discussions about the carbon tax and this and this and this, said, look, we've got to live, a green life, and we've got to make, and she said, I ride my bike to work every day on Parliament Hill. Okay, that's great. You live in the glebe in Ottawa. I can't ride my bike to Wadena, Saskatchewan from Ottawa. And, we just have to be more sensitive. Not everybody lives in downtown Toronto. Not everybody lives in Ottawa. And that is one of the real disconnects we've got in the world. Sorry, rant.
Kavis, could you imagine having to ride your bike to Macklin on weekends to visit the family?
You know,
Yeah.
my buddy,
First of all, it might be in a better shape, but
well, if
I
you
gotta
went from
admit, I'm gonna
Ottawa to
tell you, I
Wadena,
feel
you'd be,
bad because I lived in Ottawa for a while, and so the walks were wonderful. And that's a very interesting point because I do some work in human resources, and when we had a
Mhm.
project in a very small town, they identified a problem with unemployment, and I
Right,
never thought about it as a big city Edmonton guy. They don't have daycare
right,
availability like we do in the city. If we think
right.
it's bad in the city, daycare is horrible in rural
Non-existent.
areas where there's so much distance that separate, non-existent. So
Yeah,
the ability, as you talk about with leadership, to empathize and sympathize, but also have the discernment to hear both
yeah.
sides is critically important. And do you think that we have enough policymakers slash leaders that are willing to see that just an agenda is not as important as understanding?
Yeah, I mean, this is the flaw, and you know, I mean, this week we saw, you know, the prime minister being, you know, there were protests and rallies in Hamilton, and we won't use all the language and this and that. Um, and when interviewed about it and when asked, he basically said he didn't take it personally because it didn't have anything to do with him. These people were just being stirred up by, you know, hate and you're going, no, no, it actually has everything to do with you. And the same things happened to Prime Minister Harper and to Prime Minister Chrétien and to, you know, people get mad at the person that is the representation of that tone deafness that they are experiencing in their own life, right? That if you can, even the programs like daycare, you know, you get your subsidy if you go to an institution that can receive the money and the subsidy, but you, if you're using Granny Smith across the street or Mrs. Jones, you know, next door to babysit, you don't
Right.
qualify, right? So there's got to be, or tell me that I must buy an electric car when I was just listening to this the other day. The one that performs the best is the Tesla, and it operates to -7. Well, I don't know. It's like going to go to -29 tomorrow where I live. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't, you
Yeah.
know,
Welcome back to Saskatchewan again.
yeah, like an electric car is not going to work for me because if I go in the ditch, it shuts off and I freeze to death, right? There's nowhere to charge it. I mean, I could go on and on. There are just a million examples of that. It almost seems like deliberate tone deafness, but I also think that people are just so caught up in their own experience, right? That if you're a rich kid that's gotten into politics, you know, that wasn't your experience. You didn't live in a small town. You didn't have those issues. So you have to do the work. You have to do the work as a leader so that you
Yep.
can hear that. You
Yep.
can't just tell everybody you're authentic. I mean, that's the most inauthentic thing that exists, right? You actually have to feel it and learn it. So yeah, I think it's a real problem.
Yeah. Thanks, and sorry to cut you off, Kavis. I look like
Yeah.
you're going to ask something, but
Oh no, no.
it was just you started on a piece. I had the word written down here was relatability,
Yeah.
and relatability. Question not so much from um, you know, my life experience being relatable to somebody else, but my ability to relate to somebody
Right.
else's experience and learn from that.
Yeah.
And, you know, as a leader, political, business, social.
Exactly.
I mean, it's a critical piece of being a leader. If whether you're leading a two-person shop or a
Right.
2,000-person organization or a country,
And it
you
doesn't
know,
mean,
what are the things? I mean, you've developed this.
yeah. No, I'm just saying what one of the
Sorry,
things,
go ahead.
like I'm not expecting everybody to come here and, take the ice off my car every morning just so that they can figure out what minus 29 feels like. But I do want them to think through that stuff and just say, she comes from a different place, right? So what's her vantage point? They might not be able to see it, but you've at least got to stop and say, there is a different vantage point. There is a different life experience, and at least start there instead of saying, here's how we see the world and how we're going to solve all the world's problems. And if you don't agree with us, then you're wrong, or you're in this case, a climate denier or whatever. We've got to give people room to be different. And that's the part. I mean, it goes right back to what Kavis was saying about, your early days and your roommates. Like, that's how you learn, because people are different than you are. They're different from you. And we can all learn from that.
Yeah, and one of my biggest pet peeve, and Colin and I talk about this often, is with so much information available, we seem to be very myopic in
Yeah.
what we go, the sources that we tap. And I think that is a big problem, is everyone's competing for your attention, and
Yeah.
people have technology and certain media outlets have figured out a way of being so sensational that it touches you more emotionally and takes away
Yeah.
your logic. And I think, how do we combat that? How do we get people to start to understand that discourse, like on the university campuses, discourse is the way to the solution? Because great civilizations don't die, they commit suicide. And I think that
No,
we're
that's
on a
right.
very bad track of becoming so segregated in our thinking.
Yeah. I think that's a huge issue, because just the technology itself, we were talking about social media, but even the mainstream media, they have every organization now has become an echo chamber. If you, I watch a lot of American news because I'm interested, because I lived there, and because it's an important relationship, our country and their country. And if there's MSNBC that's over here and Fox News that's over here, and it's like they are living in two completely different universes. And so the people that have chosen their echo chamber then live in a completely different universe. And then when they go home for Thanksgiving or Christmas, there's no ability for even family members to talk, because they've only been getting part of the story, right? So we haven't broken down totally that way, but really, I maybe I won't even try and defend it. I think our media has become very pro pro those in you dance with the ones that brung you. You don't. The stories that I watch on the news at night, sometimes I just shake my head and say, my old editor, Bruce Phillips at CTV, would have sent me back out and said, where are the two sources on that? Where's the fact base? Where's, you don't get to just state your opinion in the closer to your piece. There's a difference between opinion, commentary, and news. And those lines have totally blurred. And so it just keeps having those ripples out, right? If you can't talk to your own family at Thanksgiving because you have different inputs and different worldviews, and if you're not willing to say, as we were just discussing, I'm going to stop and listen, okay? I've never thought of it that way. Even if the conversation starts with, I think you're nuts, but I'm going to listen to you, then that would be progress, right? That would be progress if we could get to that second part, but I'm going to hear you out, right? And we just don't do that anymore. And it's a real problem. It really is a problem, because it goes fundamentally then to political decisions, profound political decisions. Corporate decisions follow in reaction to those political decisions, right? Because that's the environment in which they're working. So I don't know at what part of this, unvirtuous cycle that we can insert ourselves to say that, boys and girls, this isn't working anymore. We got to do something different, very different. And I don't know where we do that, because we're going through a time now of such, call it political correctness, or, the woke culture, that it's hard to have discussions because you can't go out of the mainstream, what the group in large numbers agrees with. If you say anything else, and that's the only way change happens. If somebody stands up and goes, "Whoa, hold the phone," this is just not working anymore, right? We need to think about this differently. Nobody dares do that, right?
If I can ask a question, it's really about, it's going to shift into the world of mentors and I'd be really interested to know, because your background, it's astounding in terms of the accolades, but I know you didn't get there by yourself. Like, no, well, I couldn't get there by myself. Let me put it that way. Maybe, but
no, you don't.
Yeah. But along the way, you must have had some people who you've come across and mentored you at different times, would you be able to talk maybe a bit about those relationships, because it's something that I seek, and B, I feel I should be a mentor to somebody as well, but I think it's important to talk about what your experience was.
Yeah, that is the only bright spot in all of this, is that I do think that's the only way into that cycle of that we find ourselves in, where people is there are still people around from whom we can learn and who are also willing to teach, right? So I've already said this, which is, I think I came from a very privileged background, although we were poor. It's just that everybody else was poor, so we didn't know we were poor. I didn't know we were poor till I left home, because I didn't feel poor, and because I had friends and family, and we went to Sunday school and CGIT, and we swam in the summer, and we took our toboggans out in the winter. Like, I don't feel that. So it starts very early on, obviously, but the thing about mentoring, which I think is just subtle, is you don't have to say, "Gee, Collin, would you mentor me, please? I would like you to be my mentor," because that's that works to a certain extent. I think the onus is on the one that wants to be mentored, the mentee. Like, listen and watch with what people are doing, people that you respect, people that are successful. Maybe you even want to say, "I hate that person, so I'm going to watch them, and I'm never going to do anything that they do." Right? I'm going to do the opposite of everything that they do.
Yeah.
So those experiences are everywhere, right? You don't have to have this formal, "I would like to be mentored." I mean, there's some stuff you want to pass on, just about nuts and bolts and how to do it. And, don't do this if you're working for Foreign Affairs, or don't say this on TV, that kind of stuff. But I just really think it's a constant process. And the onus is on the person that wants to learn. And then everybody becomes a mentor in some way or another. I'm not trying to diminish it. I'm just saying that's the part of doing the work. That goes back to taking the stairs. There's no elevator ride, which if you tell me 5 things, I'm going to become a genius, right? And a leader. You got to do the work.
Yeah. I'll be vice president tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm glad you said that, because I'm glad I'm glad you said that, because at least for me, it kind of validates what I've kind of been feeling in terms of most of the mentors I've had. I don't even know if they knew that they were my mentors. It was kind of maybe a guerrilla tactic I was using. Right. Sometimes I say, "Can I just kind of hang out with you? Can I just watch what you're doing? Can I listen?" And you've also given me a little bit of an attitude adjustment in terms of those that I thought I never want to be like that person. Because I've had, I think it was the first time I interviewed for a CEO position. I was not prepared for this particular question, and one was, can you talk about your best experience with somebody you reported to, your best management experience, right? And so, of course, I was all prepared for that. But then they said, like, okay, what was the worst, and what did you learn from it? And I wasn't prepared for it, and I probably spilled more beans than I should have. But
when he did this, I think
if I was better prepared, I probably would have. Yeah, I probably would have taken out their name. I would have done that for sure.
Yeah. Yep.
I would have, I would have cleaned it up a little bit rather than just blast them. But that very point, like in every loss, there's a lesson, right?
Yeah.
And I think that was the thing that I learned from the question. And I walked out of the room thinking, oh my gosh, I felt like I was slamming this person, but I did learn a lot of things that I never want to do.
Right. That's just as valuable. I mean, it's just totally as valuable as being, all of the things. You're going to be nice and kind and empathetic and blah, blah. All that stuff is good. But, you've got to see the mistakes that other people make and go, I would have done that. I'm really glad I got to watch them do it so that I don't do it. I learned from their failure. And I think that's the part about just being situationally aware, as we used to say. And, who's coming at you and from where and what's around.
Experience can be gained vicariously if we're observant enough. Both of you touched on something that I want to go back to. We talk about the generation, and I think we're Generation X. I think that's what they call us. I think. I don't know, but
I'm just young and good looking. I have no idea what you're talking about.
I'm a boomer. I'm a boomer.
Okay. Yeah. So, when we go back and how they mark us, and we look at it, one of the things I thought about calling this Senator Wallin is we're that generation that has the pivot. We're really the pivot. We were used to going to the encyclopedia, the Dewey Decimal System. We didn't have cell phone. We had party lines. And yet now we're that generation also have smartphone. We know about AI, et cetera, et cetera. The millennials don't have that experience that they can grab onto. And I think it's our responsibility to understand that, they're going to expect, some of them, they're not a monolith, but some of them are going to expect to go from being the intern to being the VP the next day because they haven't learned process like we learn process. So it's not really their fault. They can type in a word and get all the answers in seconds. Right. We had to go downtown to the library to get information, newspaper clippings. My question to for that is this: are we as Canadians already projecting myself there?
Yeah. Good.
To say
you're in.
Are we becoming less? Are we becoming less competitive because we're not teaching our younger people how to go through struggle and challenge and the process of growth? Are we losing our competitiveness because we have to give everyone a ribbon for participating, and that is becoming okay? Do you find that is a problem with us? And if we are not competitive, how can we be strong, developing stronger leaders?
Yeah, I think you've really hit the nail on the head with the issue at hand. There are lots of reasons why we're not competitive. Government makes stupid decisions, and so do business leaders from time to time, and there's a whole bunch of things there. But it is always at the core the people who are making those decisions. So we do have that responsibility to mentor, even though they might roll their eyes, like our parents told us they, walked 5 miles to school and they didn't have a school bus and all that stuff. But
both ways.
But it does stick in your brain. So I do that all the time with the younger folks that I work with. is I try to tell them something, and I'll just, even something as straightforward as 9/11, right? And if you're 30, you were 10 when that happened. Even less, you were probably
Right.
7. It's 2023, right? So you have no reference point about how that changed the world, and how all of us who were there or lived anywhere close started to think about all of those things. If I said to one of the young guys in my office, I said, "Oh yeah, I mean, when I was covering the Falklands War," and he went, "What?" And I had to explain, and then I realized I was into it. Okay, so it was, 1980, 81. The Falklands, where's that? Explain that Margaret Thatcher, that the British owned this, and it was an island with some sheep on it, and that it was kind of the first live television war where we used video as opposed to film that was sent back. Well, he looked at me sort of, holding up the phone, and he goes like, "We could have shot that with the phone." I said, "Yeah, if we had the phone, we could have shot that with the phone, but we didn't." So, this is, and I'm sure this is like us sitting around hearing war stories about going uphill both ways. But on the other hand, you hope that some of it settles, and their first reaction is, "My God, she's 100." And then the next reaction was, "You mean there was, a war? You mean, and there was political, circumstances that led to it, et cetera, et cetera." And, so we do have to tell some stories. And you guys talked about this at the beginning, that it is a way to impart information without lecturing, and without, if your stories are interesting enough, maybe they'll figure out how you got from point A to point B, and that you did do the heavy lifting, and that they can't just say, "I've been here for 4 years, now I want to be king or queen because I always got the ribbon." I always got the ribbon when I was at school. I always won the race, even though I never won the race, right? So we do have to, not give ribbons for showing up in our own workplaces. And then you get to make the rules if you're, in charge. And then they will learn. I mean, and if they don't want to learn, they can quit and go somewhere else. I feel the same way about people who don't want to go back to work. Okay, you don't want to go back to work? That's fine. I'll find somebody who wants to come to work, right? Because that's the other thing. I mean, how am I going to be a leader and lead people if I don't know what they look like or what they're doing? And I don't want to get into some tracking game on their computers and, see how many hours they sat in front of the computer all day and judge their ability on that. No, I want you to show up in the office. I'm going to see if you're a team player. I'm going to watch how your brain works, and then we'll make some decisions. But I'm not going to do it if you're at home.
Yeah. And the reality is, to be effectively, you got to find a way to engage. If you can never see a person be you're never able to fully engage, and and that's true with any relationship.
Yeah, for sure.
And I realize we're approaching our time here, and I want to respect your time, Senator. And
I do talk a lot.
I've got you. Oh, I could talk for hours. I mean, ask Kavis. So I ain't got no problem talking. That's not my issue.
You're amongst colleagues here.
Yeah,
yes,
I just want to respect your time. I mean,
we'll be good.
If we were out at your place, we'd start a fire, and we'd have something to drink and have some marshmallows.
Cocktail hour somewhere.
But, I've I've got the privilege here, and I mean this sincerely, Kavis. I've got the privilege of having two people who through their careers, very public, and both had to deal with things that were great accolades, great successes, but also had to deal with failures. And one of the things that, and it's out in public in front of everybody. Kavis, you've been a coach for many years. You've been a player, a coach, a general manager, and always managing talent of some sort, and you make your efforts, your best efforts, and things still don't work out. And Senator, you made a comment, which one of the first things I wrote down when you last spoke for me, which you quoted Izzy Asper, was, if at first you don't succeed, welcome to the club.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated that, because I felt coming up, I felt the pressure that, if I failed, whether in front of my board or in front of my manager, but becoming executive now, it's in front of board and boards of directors, has been, man, a failure. If I don't succeed, I am a failure. And it was very difficult to accept.
Yeah. No, I think we all have thoughts on this, but I think what you need to be able to do is, and it's sometimes disarming, even for boards, right? To say, look, I screwed up. I actually thought I was on the right path, but I hadn't thought it all through. So, sorry. I mean, it needs to be more than that when you're standing in front of the board. But I think if you acknowledge that, that sometimes gives other people, because they've all been through it too, right? That's the thing. And they're sitting there that day going, geez, I'm glad it's him, not me. Because you remember the time that it was you, right? Yeah. So I think as long as you're saying to people, this may cost me my job. I understand that, but I just want to tell you that I thought I was on the right track for this reason. And when I was halfway down it, I figured out it was on the wrong track, and I couldn't turn around. So it won't happen again. But, I just think we all need to be able to do that. And if you're in an environment where you can't do that, then you may be in the wrong environment.
Right.
For you, if that's who you are, right? And so that, you want to say that to people in politics all the time, like, just once in a while, admit you were wrong, that you made a mistake, and maybe people would like you better, because we've all made mistakes, right? So, but we don't give people room to do that. And so you sometimes have to take the room to do it, but you have to know that it might come at a cost.
Right.
Yeah.
No, thank you. Kavis, what your thoughts on this one?
Oh, no, it's I think she hit it right on. We, as leaders, I think people expect you to be perfect, and the only perfect person they crucified. So I think I don't want to be that. And you're looked at through a lens of perfection, when all of us, as you said earlier, Collin, have warts. And when you as a leader are able to say, I made a mistake, that's not weakness. That is true strength, because you can be introspective and you can be self-critical, and you can understand that through mistakes you get better. I think it was Frederick Douglass that said, without struggle, there's no progress. I'll just amend that a little bit. Without some failure, you'll never know and understand or appreciate success. And I think people forget that. Failing is a part of the process, and you don't gain everything right away, as you guys said. So that's my thing. Unfortunately, I think it's keeping a lot of people out of the arena. I think a lot of people are more concerned about what people say about them and what they think about them versus what they know they actually really are. And confidence, as you say, is one of those foundational core. Senator Wallin, I believe that we need to accentuate that word far more. We need to have confidence in who we are and what we're striving to do versus worrying about the court of public opinion.
Yeah, I really, really agree with that. And I think, look, a little bit of that comes with age and experience too. When you've been through a lot, it doesn't threaten you as much as it does when you're younger. But if you as a leader are admitting weakness and flaws and failures, I don't mean every day, because then you probably shouldn't have the job either.
That's incompetence.
That's a competence issue. Then that gives the ones that, like, you're mentoring again by that very process, right? By doing that in front of not just the higher ups, but the underlings, right? And then they're saying, oh my God, he's not perfect and she's not perfect, and I think that's really, I think that's a responsibility that we do have as leaders, to be honest about this stuff, because you can't help people if you're not honest about it.
Oh, wow. So I got the two of the smartest people in the country on either side of my screen here. Clearly.
Only one.
Do we have to send them $20 for saying that?
You only have one. Collin. It is not me.
No, that's not true.
Oh, man. So, Senator, there's a question we've been asking every guest, and at the end of it, and really, Kavis and I have been mapping out and trying to track, if we had the opportunity to describe a prototype, we're trying to design the prototypical leader.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of identifying, Phil, the most important attribute or the most important skill, character element, for you, what would you feel would be the most important? And so we've been, essentially, we're kind of doing this poll because we found it interesting, the patterns are happening. So I'm not going to tell you the outcomes. It's not like an Ipsos Reid poll.
Not a yes?
Not yet. But I would love to hear, your thoughts, and if you would share them with us.
Okay, so I'm going to go to a military guy. Because I like the way the military operates. The rules are clear. Everybody knows what their job is, and there's a chain of command, right? So it's clear. But Norman Schwarzkopf, who ran operations in Iraq, said, when going into battle, right, the two most important things are character and strategy. And if you have to be without one, be without the strategy. Because you just need that core. We talked about at the beginning, the moral core, the sense of right and wrong. If you develop that in yourself, we all have it, and if you develop that and practice that, then you don't need to know all the answers to the question. You will know how to react in a certain situation, right? That's the thing. You can't plan it all out. So he could have a strategy for war, but if somebody, bombs headquarters, then that's a problem. So that's what we have to teach others, is you've got to rely. You can't know all the answers in all of those situations and what's going to happen, and is a pandemic going to unfold, and you can't predict all of that, but you've got to, trust your gut, and you've got to have enough confidence in who you are and your ability to do the right thing, or at least have the right intent, that you will survive most of this. So it's one of those amorphous words, but character and core, that's just it. You can learn how to do anything else, but if you don't have that sense in your being of what is right and what is wrong, what is fair and what is unfair, then it doesn't matter what they try to teach you. You've got to bring that to the table. The rest of it's a detail, right? The rest of it you'll figure out. Whatever business you're in, it doesn't matter. Can be politics or making widgets. It doesn't matter. You need to have that. So that, that's the hardest thing in the world to teach. So you can only lead by example.
Kavis, you want to close us out, man? Because
I want to keep going. Is what I
well, okay. I'll a couple of cleanup points because Senator Wallin, you've got your website PamelaWallin.com, which has got your links to your podcasts, which you've got some terrific podcasts and interviewing.
You just go right to the podcast. No nonsense with Pamela Wallin. You don't have to stop at the website. But
I was looking at the photo galleries, and it's like, man, you're high-fiving with like presidents and prime ministers all over the place.
I told you I'm old. I've been a lot of places. I've done a lot of things. I'm old.
And you got great hair in all of them. That's the thing. I've never had that opportunity to have great hair anywhere.
I may choose your option. No, I really, honestly, I do believe I've had a really lucky, charmed life, but you work hard to have a lucky, charmed life, right? I mean, and so, but look, it's an interesting thing. I'm so glad, and I fell into this accidentally, right? I'm the total accidental journalist. I was going to be saving souls up there in the penitentiary, for the rest of my life. That was my mission. But then, a friend of mine called and said, could you come down and fill in on an open line show, radio? And could your boss give you a couple of days off? He did. I walked into that room and I just went, okay, this is, now you're saving souls, a whole bunch of people at a time, because it's something called an audience. So I feel like things have been put in front of me, but you have to be willing to say yes. You gotta take the risk, right? And then, because there's lots of things there. We always think that, you go to the job every day and that's it, and you wait and get your gold watch and all that stuff. That's just not the world anymore. But you have to take a risk, and then you get to have hair, right?
Yeah, I guess maybe I'll get.
I'm gonna make an observation, and hopefully this gets me more points at home as well. I've noticed that the women in Saskatchewan, my wife has extraordinary hair. Collin, your wife has extraordinary hair. Like, I've noticed the women in Saskatchewan, their hair are just always, I was going through my head going, can I figure out one time that the women in Saskatchewan don't have almost perfectly manicured hair? My in-laws all have perfectly manicured hair.
There you go.
Is it a Saskatchewan thing?
I think it's a Saskatchewan thing. No, in my case, my mother was a teacher, and she never went out of the house unless she was properly dressed, because she was a role model. And that meant having her hair done. And my sister and I actually owned a hairdressing salon in Wadena for a while.
Oh.
We were not hairdressers, but we felt it was important because every lady in town went and got her hair done once a week. And, when the hairdresser died, we sort of thought we needed to fill that gap. So I do think it's uniquely Saskatchewan.
See, Collin, we found something else.
Yeah, that's something else. I don't think that's anywhere on any Wikipedia anywhere on you.
Breaking news. Now this is breaking news.
Senator, thank you. Thank you for doing this. Would you ever come on with us again?
Sure I would. Sure I would. But I think you're doing a really good thing, because we've got to talk about how we deal. And your point, Kavis, about the new generation not having the reference points and all, like, this is crucial stuff. I'm going to be serious for a moment here and really say that I think this is important. It's what lacking, and I don't know if we can teach courses in leadership, but we have to make it more part of the conversation. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you, and thank you for joining us on Ball Leadership today. Again, Senator Pamela Wallin. If you want to ever look on our website, it's PamelaWallin.com. and if you're ever passing through Wadena, I'm sure you'll see the sign.
Yeah,
there's a sign that says this is where she lives. and
you will drive down Pamela Wallin Drive for just a little bit of
So it's wonderful. So again, thank you.
Great to meet you,
thanks for
Kavis.
the time.
It was great. And good to see you again, Collin. It was really good. And you're just cute as buttons with your little bald heads. I just love
We always close by asking our guests to stay bald.
Stay bald. Yeah. and you can try as hard as you want. You don't have to actually do that. But
I won't do that. I'll get a little bathing cap next time I come on, just so I can be part of the game.
I like this. Yeah, let's like SCTV or something again. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Bye. We'll see you again.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to this episode of Bald Leadership. If you enjoyed the show, please follow, like, and share. See you next time.